Okay, so now we've got some confessions. Well, people were drunk. It's supposed to be terrifying confessions. What terrifying confession has someone told you while drunk? They may not be terrifying. They may just be sad or creepy or weird. But here we go. Ready? Once had someone tell me while drunk, I need a girl with an open mind and a tight vagina because I have a micro penis. That was pretty terrifying. Oh, wow. It was one of the most uncomfortable moments in my 30 years on this planet. Okay. Great pickup line. I need to write that. Night before his wedding, I'm still in love with C. But I'm going to marry F tomorrow because it's too late now. Won't do any good changing letters because we already know you're talking about Rachel and it. But I'm talking. My ex told me the only reason I was still alive was because he was stopping all of his colleagues from taking it too far. I was 10, he was 17. His colleagues were his uncle's friends. I imagine what they said was true because they were horrible people who did horrible things to me and many other young girls. And they're alluding to something quite terrible. My awesome boss at the time, who didn't say much about his life, confessed to me that his marriage wasn't something he wanted, and he was only staying in it for love of his two young daughters. It was heartbreaking. It happens a lot, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Once at a college party, this big guy got upset, picked up a table, and threw it across the room, shouting, "My uncle molested me." Everyone was terrified, but we felt really bad for that guy. Yeah, I can understand why. After a work party, the wife of a colleague and me ended up being the last two people standing. We were both fairly drunk, and she started telling me about how she was raped by a priest when she was a kid. The church covered it all up, and the bastard never faced any charges. That's wow. I had a girlfriend say she might be into girls too. I told her to invite a woman upstairs to join us, and her friend came up. It turned into me being a third party viewer while watching two women discover their lesbian tendencies while I just kind of sat there. It's usually what happens. Good admitting it. That's kind of freaky. Told me about the time his girlfriend had an abortion and about all the pain it caused them. Edit to say emotional pain. There was no physical pain that was discussed. They were together for decades. I heard my mom tell her friend that I was a mistake and her reason her and her dad got divorced. That's why I didn't eavesdrop. Wow. My wife told me she cheated on me. It'd been a few months and we worked everything out, but by God, it's terrifying. And she said that. My ex told me he'd been molested by his sister between the ages of 6 and 11. She was 9 to 14. His dad walked in on it once and didn't do anything. His own family knew about him being sexually abused for years and did absolutely nothing to protect him. Terrifying, but tragically horrible. I got drunk with my uncle and we started talking about relationships. And as a game, I asked, "What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in a relationship?" We went back and forth saying all the dumb and fucked up things we'd done to the women in our lives. It's escalating and we're becoming more and more honest. So eventually he shouts excitedly, "I beat her." It got dead silent. We drank quietly and then went to bed. It's never really been the same since. Imagine that. That they cheated on their husband with other friends in our group. I still haven't told anyone about my husband. That would be a horrible thing. You have people tell you that and know and not be able to say anything or not be willing to say anything or not knowing if you should say anything to the people involved. I mean, you want to keep the confidence, but it's also betrayal of the other friends too. That's a shitty thing. Aha, I put Adderall in your beer. We're gonna party till the sun comes up, bro. Oh wow. Never spike somebody's anything. I had someone tell me that he molested his daughter when she was an infant because he was angry and thought that his girlfriend had cheated on him, and it wasn't his biological daughter. He went on to say DNA testing was done and it was determined that she actually was his daughter, and he felt very guilty about the whole thing. His daughter was 7 or 8 at the time when he told me this. I literally spent a night tossing and turning, thinking about it, and finally decided I think it was going put on you. A male friend tell me that he was raped me, that he raped me once when I was passed out drunk. I am a straight male and have been friends with this guy for 15 years and been drunk with him a lot. Since then, I found out a lot of messed up stuff about him. I hope you're still friends with him. That's wow. A next friend, not because of this, but other circumstances, basically suggested he had sex with his uncle just to piss off his aunt, mom's sister, and he was saving it for when they had a really big fight. Later, he denied saying anything like that, of course. But a while later, we heard that he was indeed did have problems with his family, and they ended up moving out of town. That was when I was like 16 or 17 years old. I put high on acid, and my friend got super talkative and honest. He went to the local red light district to do a bit of window shopping. On this particular occasion, he decided that he wanted to purchase a young lady, so he picked one out and walked her back to a hotel room. They got down to business, at which point my friend found a penis under her skirt that she hadn't told him about. He was surprised, but decided that since he paid for it, he was going to keep going. During the course of it, the young lady gentleman put their finger up my friend's bum hole, using a very sharp fingernail in the process and causing an anal fissure. He had to go to the hospital, and they gave him one of those soft rings to put on it. He'd been telling everyone that it was a sports injury. Yeah, what are you going to say after that? How are you going to, yeah, just, yeah. I had a friend of my brother's tell in detail about her love life and how she had a sex addiction and was an info, and she never tells the story to people because blah, blah, blah. Every single time I come out for her, she would forget that she'd already met me and tell me these disturbing details because she was always drunk out of her mind. If I tried to say I already knew, she'd be like, "No, we've never met." I would remember every time. I was too young and taught not to be rude back then, but it terrifies me all the same. My friend died from a drug overdose. After the funeral, a mutual friend of ours and I were getting drunk when he broke down crying. He asked me if I remember the time when he and our dead friend told me about an accident they witnessed, and they saw a truck driver dying. I told him I did. He then told me the most fucked up shit. He said that a friend ran up to the dying man and stole his wedding ring, and that man couldn't do anything but look up, terrified, at our friend as he was being robbed. I knew they were bad into drugs, but I never thought they would do anything like that. I grew up with them. They were like my brothers. I really don't trust anyone completely anymore. A friend of mine told me that we were out of college about his hazing back in freshman year of high school for wrestling. There was some repressed, barbaric homosexual stuff. He started tearing up. It was bad. You hear about some of this hazing stuff, but there's plenty of times you don't hear about it and it goes unreported. Me, not drunk, but high as a kite. When I was in the Peace Corps, I told my best friend that I loved him and then kissed him. I didn't realize what I did and feared for my friendship with him. He told me, "I've known you were gay for over a year, and I've seen you glancing at me. It's okay, but I'm straight." To add to this, we were both young. We were both wearing boxer shorts, and it was hot as fuck in Waikhare, Thailand at the time. Wow. Technically not a confession, but I did stop a murder. About 3 a.m, my wife and I were woken by a man shouting angrily and drunkenly into his phone outside our flat. The woman with him was trying to get him to shut the fuck up. Whilst he was literally yelling the rage about his intentions to break into someone's house, pretending they were not there for them, pretend they were just there for the money, and then cut him into little pieces. Naturally, I was on the line with the police, informing them of the details. Though the guy met up with his accomplices, they got into a van as the police arrived. No idea if they were caught. The police were in pursuit, so there was that. Super weird because it was like the villain reveals the evil plans trope, but in real life. I had a girl who had only met a couple of times before confess to me that she was purposely taking the pill so she would get pregnant and trap her boyfriend into a relationship with her, since she stumbled upon some text with a friend that he was planning on leaving. The kid at that point was already a year or two old, and they were engaged with the wedding coming up shortly. I didn't know either of them really to say anything, so I told my mutual friend about it that night before I left. And the dude ended up thinking my friend was coming on to him somehow, even though she was there with her significant other. So she promptly left the party, and the couple got married and divorced eventually. If my ex were still in love with me, I wouldn't be married to you. Oh my gosh, wow, that's a hard one right there. Yeah. An ex who was known for getting mad at me for having limits in the bedroom told me that she raped 2 women in high school and college. One so the bitch would leave her the fuck alone, and the other agreed to it. Said she enjoyed it, but never spoke to her again. Wow. My sister's boyfriend at the time told me he thought he might have fallen for the wrong sister. Doesn't compare to most of these, but my sister's my best friend, and we were so scared he might ruin that. Wow. That one's just, yeah. Police officer, arriving at a stabbing call as a backup unit and ending up transporting the suspect back to the cells. He was extremely drunk and high. Started talking semi-coherently in the back seat of my patrol car, and I was mostly ignoring him. At one point he said something like, "This isn't the first time I've done this." She was so young. And then he started bawling. I flipped on my recorder serendipitously and to see if he would say more, but he didn't. He just cried and cried. Intox confessions are generally useless anyway, and once he sobered up and spoke to his lawyer, he denied having any knowledge. I talked to our major crimes guys, but they didn't think there was anything they could do about it. I still wonder, though, and it wasn't bravado, that's for sure. Ugh. At a family gathering, my grandma got tipsy and started telling stories from her childhood. While she was doing this every time, no matter tipsy or sober, guessing it was just a normal grandma thing, this time it took a dark turn. She told us a story about the reason she hates to go to the dentist and particularly hates the drilling part. She told us a story about when she was 6 years old. During World War II, my family lived in Hamburg, Germany, right next to the harbor. During a particular week in 1943, the city was continuously bombed and over 35,000 people died and more than 100,000 people were injured. The houses were mostly hit, mostly burning people down, creating a huge fire with such force that I got sucked not only the oxygen in, but created strong winds and also people. The fire created such heat that people running out of their burning houses got stuck in the molten asphalt in the streets and burned it to death. It was all happening around her. That particular smell was present for over a week in her part of the city. Drilling in your tooth creates the exact same smell. My grandma had to stop the dentist as she recognized the smell immediately. That story shook us to the core. It came out of the blue. It still sends chills down my spine. Wow, that's pretty dark and sad. Let's just go on. I was in law enforcement dating someone from a different agency. I was city, he was county, and we had some rank both in backwater deep south. I had some out-of-town family staying with me for a wedding, and he stopped by. He was drunk and agitated and was wearing his sidearm. It was very out of character. One of my guests' boyfriends was the police chief in a very large city up north. He diffused the situation and made him remove his gun and had me walk him home. He lived one street over. When I got him home, he asked me to stay and talk. I didn't really want to. I had people waiting for me, but he was really out of his mind. Long story short, he said that he killed someone back in his home. He was with his dad, and they were hunting when they got into a fight with another hunter, and he shot him. He even explained this whole upper and lower peninsula thing to me, as I had never really been left backwater coastal town. I was pretty naive. This was pre-internet days, and it wasn't just knowledge I would have. He said his dad was the police chief and ran the town he was from, and that they ended up in the backwater instead of being close to a major city. He was upset they covered it up and said it thought of the guy's family and that they worried about the missing hunter. I ran home and told the police chief friend. We called the state police from that state and anonymously reported it. Anonymously because I was battling every day on the job, and the department was corrupt, and there was so much crap going on I didn't trust anyone. We had just been in the middle of a huge investigation, and I worried about my safety. So anonymous tip it was. It took the state police about 2 days to find me. Chief friend got involved and told about his state of mind, waving sidearm while drunk, etc. Also began months of harassment and intimidation. My phone number and numbers of every family member were given out. People called my mom and told her things about me. No matter where I was, even if I parked outside county limits, cops would run my plates over the radio and ask what home address and name was tied to the plate. Then they would ask dispatch to make a note on the current location. Everyone knew where I was all the time. I had a few friends that would go to the sheriff and ask people to back off, but it never got any better. I have to admit that I sank pretty low and tried to sabotage a few careers with the info I had, and I'm not proud of that. Eventually, I just gave up and packed up my little car and drove far away. Never worked in law enforcement again. And the killer cop? State police said they matched up a few possibilities, but Chief had alibis for each time frame backed up by officers under his command. Killer left for a larger metropolitan city near Backwater, probably an exemplary officer. I visit home and run into some of my former partners and friends that did not stand up for me occasionally. I pretend to not even know about them. My former boss, who was instrumental in getting me fired, had a slow fall from grace until he died. He was contracted once to verify employment, and the person told me he had a ton of foul and offensive stuff on me. Not quite the sweet old guy that recruited me to work for him when he taught a class at the academy. I am not angry. If I had stayed in the law enforcement, I think it would have killed me. I was already taking a lot of it too hard. I would have married a cop or a fighter fire and then just looked forward to every date night at Applebee's and had a boring life. I would never have left Backwater and do not know what would have been out there for me. But a murderer and a whole police department that helped cover it up still walk free. Not to mention the dozen or so cops, deputies, and assorted people that joined in harassing me until I left. I might write a book someday. There was so much corruption, and as small as we were, it was quite a few national crimes that made headlines while I was there. Not to mention all the internal investigations that were done. That's a lot. Wow. Wow. Hope you are safe and happy and doing what you need to do. I had a buddy tell me his friend drunkenly confessed to him that he had killed his stepdad and made it look like a suicide. His stepdad had been abusive towards him and his mom for years, and it finally broke when he made it look like his stepfather had hung himself in their garage. I don't know who the friend was. I've never given a name or so much or much else to the story. I shared this as a reply to the person commenting about their reliving a murder hike, but here. I have a similar one of a man who I was dating divulged how he killed a dude in the bathroom at a rest stop in New York with a lead pipe when he was a teen. Some sort of retaliation for a friend or some shit like that. There was a whole group of guys, but he was the one to do it. I was equally freaked and tried to understand and be sympathetic at the same time because he was worked up over it. But I still got the fuck out of that relationship ASAP because I didn't want to be in any way involved with someone who had that sort of history, hiding just slightly under the surface. We've only been together a few weeks when he told me this. We knew this was going to get dark and deep. My parents told me while very drunk that they were very kinky, into heavy BDSM, and that my dad was a bottom. My stepmother reassured me they were also kinkier than I was. That was not fun. No. I can imagine that. Drinking with someone, they told me a war experience in Afghanistan where the enemy attacked his outpost. The outpost was up a mountainside and protecting a village below. The enemy attack came from a ridgeline next to the village. One of the Marines was shot and bleeding out at the outpost. He basically went berserk and started firing at anything that moved while his buddy was bleeding out, including villagers, while laughing maniacally at the women and children who were being hit. Nice guy. I didn't blame him. I figure anyone could go crazy in that situation. Said he saw a demon. Metaphorically, I imagined. I'm kind of honored the dude trusted me enough to tell me a story, because I am so emotionally repressed that it's extremely uncool. People don't tell me how lame I am until they get to know me a little bit longer. That's wow. Yeah. My mom told me everything about her childhood and teenage years, which was pretty horrific. Her dad was horrible and her mother enabled it. Dad told how much he wished I was never born and he wished he'd never had me, and I was his biggest disappointment and wished that my brother was alive to take my place. Wow. That's a lot. Yeah. Guy I worked with was hanging out with me and my friends. My friends left and I was alone with a coworker. He didn't seem that drunk and he later claimed he was. He told me all about the fantasies he had about raping and torturing me. Yep, I left pretty promptly. Well, yeah, don't blame you. My roommate confessed that he stole my identity, opened up credit cards in my name, and has been dating a guy, but he isn't gay because the guy is really a girl. This is way before the trans was remotely accepted or thought of, as the guy didn't have anything resembling transition. that was a fun night. I moved out the next morning. I lost a lot of money on that fiasco. Ended up being sent to collections because he paid his rent from my bank account, and then I recovered it. It came after me instead of him. But also had to pay $1,100 to break the lease. Oh my gosh, dude, that's awful. That's just one hit after another. Yeah. He knew the identity of the perpetrator of an unsolved homicide of a young woman killed about 20 years before. I was 20-ish, and he was my stepdad. Well, edit, the person telling the story was my stepdad. Okay. That was a murderer. Oh, that he was a murderer who hit and killed someone while drunk and been on the run ever since. Stopped talking to him after that. I don't blame you. Lots more murder confessions, but I think we need to end this on something slightly less horrible. Let's try. Ready? I had a boyfriend who never talked about his past ever. He talked so fondly about his old state but just about the actual state, never about the people. If he tried to prod further, he would just say, "Oh well, it doesn't matter anymore." We were young. I was about 19, and he was maybe 23 or so. He drank a shit ton at the time, and whatever we were young, so we just thought it was normal and all in good fun. One night, while shit-faced, he started talking about how much he loved going into the woods, and how he and his friends enjoyed playing on the rivers and streams in the old state. Then he got very sad and started to babble a bit incoherently. I heard him say something along the lines of his friend came to the house on meth, and they were all also on drugs. Then more incoherently babble about something about his friend getting shot in the face. Then more incoherent babbling, then something about why he can never go home again. He was so desperately sad and missed his home very much. You could tell every time the topic came up. So yeah, I am pretty sure he accidentally, or on purpose, killed a guy and was on the run. I have my money on accident because he seemed so distraught, but you never know. Also, you barely know anyone and anything at 19 years old. I often wonder if he had to face those demons. We will have to at some point. Very, very tragic, deep, serious subject. So we're going to end it there. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all those things. And please go watch another video. I appreciate it. Talk to you later.